In this video, we're taking a look at the WYZE Cam OG Telephoto 3x. This is a unique camera in the WYZE lineup that offers a narrow field of view telephoto lens to see a small area at a great distance, as opposed to the traditional wide-angle lens that sees a large area at one time. You'll see that this makes this a great companion to your existing cameras to try to provide greater detail of license plates and faces at greater distances despite having the same 1080p resolution as the WYZE Cam V3. As usual, we'll do an unboxing, go over the setup and specs, and do the demos, and we'll also do a comparison against the WYZE Cam V3 and the WYZE Cam V3 Pro. Please use the timestamps in the description area below to skip ahead to the sections that interest you. I only ordered one of these and I started ranting too much during the unboxing, so we're going to skip ahead to everything nicely laid out on the table. As an early adopter, you may or may not receive this sticker, but everything else should be included. A quick start guide, a 6-foot micro USB cable, mounting screws, a 5-volt 1-amp power adapter, a backing plate, a mount, and of course the camera itself. The camera is very similar in size to the V3, but the mounting options have completely changed. The V3 featured a magnetic base, and if you unscrew the screw on the bottom, that exposes an industry standard 1/4-inch tripod thread. However, the WYZE Cam OG series does not have industry standard threading, and therefore out of the box it won't be able to work with any industry standard mounts that you might already have around your house if you've ever had a security camera before. The threading is smaller, and I can only speculate that they did this for cost savings, but it might also be that they intended to sell more accessories. I think this was a very poor decision, and especially knowing that the V3 had the correct threading and someone intentionally made this decision to make it smaller. We're not covering the stacking abilities of this camera because I only bought the telephoto, but they intended for you to buy the WYZE Cam OG and stack the WYZE Cam OG telephoto on top of that using this almost hot shoe mount on top. So the weirdness continues here. Someone intentionally made the decision to make this almost a hot shoe mount so you could use industry standard parts, but they decided to make it too shallow so this doesn't quite fit in. This decision made me mad enough that during this video I went ahead and stopped recording and I went and ordered some accessories, and I'll add on to the end of this video how you can use industry standard tripod threads with this camera. Rant aside, this isn't a horrible camera. It still has a 1080p resolution sensor, the color night vision mode that WYZE is known for. It's still IP65 rating for outdoor use, and it still has a micro SD card slot, so you don't necessarily have to buy a Cam Plus subscription. But since they've removed the Cam Plus Lite option that was available on the V3, you will need either a micro SD card or a Cam Plus subscription to make this camera worthwhile. As far as what you'll need for the micro SD card, make sure that it's at least a class 10 and anywhere between 32 gigabytes and 256 gigabytes in size. Now let's get into the setup. So the first step is obviously to provide power to the camera, and since this is micro USB, you need to look inside and make sure that the cable is facing the right way as you plug it in.
Ready to connect.
As soon as I provided power, it said ready to connect, so apparently this camera is ready to be set up already, but there is a setup button on the bottom that you would press and hold to start the setup process.
Ready to connect.
And it looks like the camera's barely using any power. It's barely even registering on this Blue Eddy. From the WYZE app, if this is your first time, you would need to set up an account, but once you're into your account, in the top left there's a plus icon, and then tap on Add Device, go to Cameras, and you'll see one for WYZE Cam OG. There is not a separate one for the telephoto, so just choose WYZE Cam OG. You'll see on the front of the device that there's a red blinking light. We hit Next in the app. We already heard that it says it's ready to connect, so we're going to begin setup. In the past, the cameras like the WYZE Cam V3 would use a QR code to get set up, but they've added Bluetooth into this WYZE Cam OG lineup, so now the phone can simply pair with it. We're going to put this on the guest network.
Connecting to network. Wi-Fi connected. Setup complete.
So the setup is much quicker than the traditional V3 cameras. You have the option for a Cam Plus trial. Again, if you do not get Cam Plus, you will need a micro SD card to use this camera. And if you have a lot of WYZE cameras, you might consider getting the WYZE Cam Unlimited plan, which offers you 99 licenses instead of just one. You have the option to share the camera. You'll simply put in the email address of the people that you would like to share the camera with, and they'll get an email notification so they can add this camera to their WYZE account. These cameras are designed to be stacked, so you have the option to set up the second WYZE Cam OG, but because I only wanted the telephoto and I'm going to be sticking with my V3s, we're only going to do the telephoto setup. And we're all set. There is a firmware update required, so we'll have to hit update now.
Firmware is being updated. Firmware upgraded successfully.
Now that we have the camera connected to our account, let's add in a micro SD card. Again, the micro SD card should be a class 10 or above, and it could be anywhere between 32 gigabytes and 256 gigabytes. I would recommend getting a 64 or 128 gigabyte card for this camera. On the bottom of the WYZE Cam OG is a micro SD card slot. Lift up on that silicone cover and it exposes the micro SD card slot. And with the gold pins facing out, I guess where the lens is looking, kind of drop the micro SD card on top and it should push fairly easily into place until it clicks into place. That beep means that it is detected by the camera. Now back over on the app, we can go to Settings, Advanced Settings, and we see Record to Micro SD card is already enabled. And now you have the option to choose either continuous recording or events only. Continuous recording will record at all times, and events only will only record when there is motion detected. I prefer to have continuous recording because the motion doesn't always pick up based on your sensitivity settings. Or you might like to see video that happened before the motion was detected. If you go to Manage Micro SD card, you can see how much space is remaining on the card, and you can also format the card. You don't have to do this on a regular basis. Once the card is filled, the WYZE Cam will automatically delete the oldest recording to make room for the newest recording. Under advanced settings, there are some other good settings to mess with. Night vision mode, depending on your atmosphere, you might want to set that to auto or off. I will leave mine on auto for now. The camera status light, if you want to be more covert, you can turn that light off. That way it doesn't draw attention. But for the most part, you should probably want to keep that on. That way the camera does draw attention. Now, if you're placing this camera behind a window and trying to see outside, you are going to want to turn off the night vision IR lights. This does not affect night vision mode. If you have other cameras outside that can illuminate the yard, or you can buy an external IR light emitter, this camera sensor will be able to take advantage of that light. But if you had the IR lights on the inside of your glass, the glass is going to reflect that IR light right back into the sensor and you won't be able to see anything. So that's a good one to turn off when the camera is mounted inside and you're trying to see outside a window. I like to leave the timestamp watermark on, that way I know what time an event occurred. If you're mounting the camera upside down, you'll want to turn on the rotate image 180 degrees, but keep in mind that this isn't completely waterproof on the bottom. So try not to mount the camera upside down outside unless it is inside of a case that protects water from going in. I like to turn off the Show WYZE logo just so I can see more video footage. The showing the WYZE logo doesn't add any benefit to the recorded images like the timestamp does, so I turn that off. The record sound option is the ability to turn off the microphone. In some states you might be required to turn that off based on the local laws and restrictions in your area. So now we'll go through some of the other settings in this camera. The very first one is name, which we named during the setup, but if you wanted to change the name, you click on name and you can change the name there. Then we have detection settings. In here we have the sensitivity. I like to keep the sensitivity on the higher side. And then as far as sound detection, I like to keep that on the low side because I live near a highway, so it's pretty loud. So I turn that down to around the 8 to 12 range. but I keep the image sensitivity high because I want to record more events rather than less events. If you do live near a busy road and you don't want to record every car that's crossing by, you can turn on the detection zone and you can simply touch where you want the camera to detect. And anywhere that isn't in this box will not count as a motion trigger. For now, I am not going to turn on the detection zone because we haven't mounted the camera yet. If you're trying to analyze what's making your camera detect motion, turning on motion tagging is a good debug tactic. That way you can see what portion of the image is thinking that there's motion going on. But for the most part, you would want to leave that turned off unless you're trying to figure out what's triggering your camera when you don't want it to be triggered. Now under event recording, we want to make sure that it records when it detects motion and records when it detects sound. If you have a Cam Plus Pro subscription, you have additional options available to you. For notification, this is one place where having a Cam Plus subscription comes in handy. You can have this send notifications every time there's a motion or sound event, but that could be quite often. Having a Cam Plus subscription, you can limit the notifications to vehicles and pet detection, and we'll cover that later in the video. For now, we're going through the setup processes if you did not have a Cam Plus subscription. Under alarm settings, you have the ability to turn on or off various triggers for smoke alarms and CO alarms. I think this is a good thing to leave turned on, but keep in mind you can get false positives as well. But I think it's better to get the false positives than not get the alerts at all. We already covered the advanced settings. Going to rules, this is where you can have various triggers. You can have the camera turn on or off at specific times. You can have other WYZE cameras trigger recording on other WYZE cameras. There's all kinds of things that you can do here, but that's outside the scope of this video. As far as sharing, you can add in additional email addresses to share this camera with other users. They can get their own WYZE account, and then they would have access to the camera that you shared with them. Under device info, this is where you can see the signal strength of the Wi-Fi. You can see what network it's on, the firmware version, the MAC address, and the date that it was activated. You have access to WYZE support, and if you ever wanted to restart the camera, you have that ability here. And at the very bottom, you can delete this device completely from your account. So again, without a Cam Plus subscription, you will need a micro SD card to use this camera, but once the micro SD card is in there, you get to take advantage of this nice new events history. But they did make it to where you need to tap to show the menu now. From here, you can tap on SD card to access the video history. So we can kind of scroll back similar to the more expensive Unify cameras. We'll go live to go back. We can tap this button to take a photo. We can tap this button to record a video clip. We can tap on Siren to potentially scare away some intruders. And the siren's supposed to be pretty loud, so let's give it a try. And in fact, I'm going to turn the camera around so the speaker won't be facing me. Here's a test of the siren. The siren will run for 30 seconds by default. If you tap on album, it'll take you to all your recorded videos. If you go to Timelapse, you can set the camera to take a video over a period of time. You can choose the start time, and for duration, you can choose how long you want the time-lapse to run and how often you want it to take a clip. If you're going to do this for an extended period of time, you should increase the interval. That way the file size isn't too large. So if we wanted to take a one-day time-lapse at 3 seconds, it would take 3.6 gigabytes. If we change the interval to 9 seconds, that will be a much more manageable 1.2 gigabytes. Tap set to start the time lapse. If you want to turn off the camera, you can tap on turn off. And now the camera should not be broadcasting live. But of course, if you really want to be sure, I would recommend getting some smart plugs to go along with the camera. That way you could just cut the power to the camera completely. You can tap on turn on to turn the camera back on. So without the Cam Plus subscription, the events history is only going to show snapshots, but if you tap on a snapshot, and then do show menu, you have the option to jump to SD. So because we had the micro SD card installed, we can see the video playback from that snapshot. If you did not have a micro SD card, or if you did not have a Cam Plus subscription, the snapshot would be the only thing you have. So be sure to add that micro SD card if you don't have the Cam Plus subscription. So now that we've run through all of these features, let's change over to Cam Plus and see what additional features we have there. So within my account, I already have a Cam Plus Unlimited subscription, so I'll click on that. And then at the very bottom, I can add cameras. There's the OG Telephoto 3x, I'll check that, and then hit close, hit back, go back to home, go back to the OG Telephoto, and now we'll see up here at the top that we have the Cam Plus icon. And now instead of just getting snapshots here, we should also have cloud recorded video. So whereas before we would just have a snapshot, now when we tap on this, we'll get either a cloud recording, or if it's recent enough, I believe it also just goes into showing us live video. So that recorded a 12-second clip that's stored in the cloud. So even if someone stole this camera, we would still have that video footage. So that is the other major advantage of having a Cam Plus subscription. Now the other big bonuses of having Cam Plus is on event recording. You can turn on some smart detections here, so you can have this only record if it detects a person, pet, or vehicle. And then over on notifications, for motion events, you can have this only notify you if it detects a person, pet, or vehicle. You would turn off other motion events. That way you're only getting these person, pet, and vehicle detections. That will cut down on the false notifications by having the WYZE AI detect a person before notifying you. That's pretty much it for the add-ons. When you add on Cam Plus, you get the advanced notifications, you get a better events history playback, and you get cloud recording. The cloud recording is a big one. That way if someone steals your camera, you still have access to that video. If you have many cameras, you might consider getting the Cam Plus Unlimited license, which gives you a license for 99 cameras, and then you get access to those features on all of your cameras. Now let's get these cameras set up so we can do some comparisons. Just like in the previous video where we did a side-by-side comparison of the V3 and the V3 Pro, we're stacking the cameras on top of each other again, and starting from the bottom we have the V3 with the 1080p resolution, the middle has the V3 Pro with a 2K image sensor resolution, and on top we have the OG Telephoto 3x with a 1080p resolution. The point of this video is to show what you could potentially see by using a telephoto in addition to your regular cameras. So we will be digitally zooming in the video from the V3 and the V3 Pro to try to match what we're seeing in the telephoto. That means you're going to see a lot of digital zoom in the V3 and the V3 Pro, especially with the V3 since it only has a 1080p resolution sensor, and we're going to try to zoom in about 3x to match what we're seeing in the telephoto. The V3 Pro has that wide angle lens, but as we switch over to the OG T3, we have that 3x zoom, so everything is automatically clearer even though this is a 1080p resolution lens. So you'll see the V3 is digitally zoomed to match the OG T3, and the quality of the mailbox and the blinds across the street is just way better. But in all three cases, at 25% speed, we still can't see the license plate. We'll need a higher frame rate and a higher resolution both in order to get that done. In this example, I'm pulling into my driveway. Again, we're using digital zoom on these cameras, and at the very end of the driveway, you can already make out the license plate on the OG T3X, and not quite on the V3 Pro, but very soon after, you can see it on the V3 Pro. And then even later still we can see it on the V3. In Texas, we have vehicle registration stickers that are on the windshield, and this is going to be the same video plate again, but pay attention to the registration sticker that's in my windshield. Neither one of these cameras are going to be able to pick that up like the OG T3 can, and you can already make it out. It says it's 0224 on that sticker there. It's very impressive what you can accomplish with these telephoto lenses. In this example, the lights inside the house are off. The V3 did not switch into night vision mode, but the other two cameras, the V3 Pro and the T3, did switch into night vision mode, which means that the frame rate drops as well. The OG T3X drops down to 10 frames per second, the V3 Pro drops down to 15. So again, with that 10 frames per second, it's kind of hard to get really good footage of anything moving quickly. But if they're not moving quickly, you can still kind of make out what this person is wearing 100 feet away as they decide if they're going to go into this private property or not. In this clip, we're in the daytime, so the frame rate jumps to 20 frames per second. And you can almost make out what kind of breed that dog is. For this last example, the V3 Pro and the OG T3 are not exactly lined up, but the OG T3 is actually able to make out the license plate somewhat once you digitally zoom in. Earlier in the video, I pointed out that the WYZE Cam OG Telephoto does not use industry standard threading. So one way to make it use industry standard threading is to buy a mic stand adapter. This is a 1/4 inch female to M4 male adapter, and you can screw this into the bottom of the WYZE Cam. And then with the adapter, you can screw it onto your industry standard 1/4 inch mounts. Another way to add industry standard threading is to buy a WYZE Cam case. As of filming, there were no OG cases available, but because the size is very similar to the V3, I was able to purchase a V3 case that features a silicone ring for the spotlight. And I'll show you how you can just use this to fill in the gap on the bottom of the camera. For the WYZE Cam V3, the stand on the bottom of the camera is designed to slide right in on this case. The telephoto does not have that stand, so there's a gap on the bottom. Simply fold up the included silicone and shove it into the bottom of the casing. And then put the cover on. Be sure that you went through the setup process beforehand because you won't be able to get to the setup button with this silicone in place. This particular kit is sold as a 2-pack and includes both pieces that you need to mount this outside. So now your WYZE Cam OG can be installed where you already have industry standard mounts, and you get the added protection of the outdoor case. As you saw from the example footage, the WYZE Cam OG Telephoto 3X is a great addition to the WYZE Cam lineup. While I'm still going to use my traditional wide-angle lenses to capture an event as a whole, I'm focusing the telephoto lens on an area where I'm going to get a high hit rate on license plates and faces to potentially solve a crime someday. Although you do lose the free cloud recording, you can simply add in an SD card or go the route of getting an unlimited Cam Plus license. And at any rate, this is a very affordable solution to beef up your security at home or business. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos, please put them down in the comments section down below. And if you've enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you for watching.